A deep breath exhaled from your lips, feeling the strain from your joints seizing after today's session. You hopped on the spot every so often, but the heat from your skin was obvious to feel. Your joints needed to keep moving, at least during the cooldown until they were safe to function out in society.
You nearly had me there,
called out Kirishima with a towel around his shoulders, glistening with sweat.
Any closer, my head would have been cleaved off.
Now you're painting me like I'm out to get you.
You piped through your breaths, running on the spot with knees kicking high.
Well, we both have a lot to learn from each other, such as your tendency to dive in head first.
In between your deep breaths, you huffed through your nostrils, shaking your head at Kirishima's remark. Since his invitation to train and spar together, you discovered the advantages and merits in the exercise, learning and adapting how both of your quirks relatively countered each other. Every week you found different ways of implementing how to utilize your quirk effectively against a titan such as Kirishima. It was a surprise alone that Fourth Kind allowed this kind of work-related training for you. Perhaps your reputation had preceded you more than you realized. Or Fourth Kind had an odd sense of humor to keep you in close quarters with the Red Riot.
Excuse me, mister, but who decided to charge in on that mission 3 months ago?
You perked with a tease, flexing and stretching your limbs to relieve the tightness in your muscles.
That was called for,
rebutted Kirishima.
I had control and restraint.
You were ready to march on in without hearing from the agents inside. I wouldn't call that restraint.
But I was in control of my urges.
A toss of your towel slammed into his smiling grin, whipping it from your person while you still hopped about. You couldn't help but pout at his remarks with every statement you made. No matter how much they sounded like excuses, you couldn't argue against the truth behind them. Despite the few months on the weekly seeing Kirishima for these work-related training sessions, you attuned to his personality and quips. You found him to be an awful liar, but also a man who acted first. The media had him painted so heroically in their articles that this more casual, if not softer side of him was overshadowed. You felt a sense of privilege learning more about him in close quarters, combat or otherwise. Kirishima had already packed down his training gear while he picked up his large gym bag, still with his towel, wiping away whatever sweat remained on his brow. His eye landed on you while you hopped once more on the spot, your toes bouncing against the vinyl floors of the training room.
You go ahead. I'm going to keep cooling off for a bit,
you announced between hops.
Sure. You know the way out?
He asked, receiving a quick thumbs up from you. He swiftly pulled a fresh towel from his bag, tossing it into your face playfully while you snatched it midair, pouting at the slight interruption in your flow.
Don't stay up too long,
he advised. All he received was a smile before he found you wrapping the towel loosely across your shoulders. Kirishima left you to your devices, self-assured that you could lock up the room despite you being a free agent outside of Fat Gum's agency. He turned his eye on you before reaching the exit, watching you perform simple cooldown exercises. It was strange encountering someone with a quirk that affected their physical day-to-day outside of those who were mutant types. Every session thus far had pushed both of your limits, but had also extended your cooldown process, spending longer periods of time before leaving the premises and even going so far as to acquaint yourself with the occasional night guard. It had been a few months, a week at a time. and he smiled at the thought of this kinship nurturing between each other. Rejuvenated from the showers and dressing for the night, Kirishima had planned to meet friends for a night out, a rarity due to their work lives, but knowing Sero's birthday was fast approaching and hearing Bakugo taking some leave, it all fell in place to celebrate and catch up with the old academy gang. Funnily enough, the night was organized between Eijirou and Kaminari, the two most unlikely to achieve such a feat since UA. But with Kaminari working closely with the Public Hero Commission and Eijirou taking more hands-on responsibilities managing within her agency, it was a pleasant surprise. Drinks were abundant and conversation was rowdy, but it felt good to reconnect with friends again, even though Kirishima still worked closely with a few.
Heard about the crackdown effort in Isaha. Dude, you practically uncovered the plot.
Congratulated Sero, a little jolly now with drink in hand.
At least we've stopped the shipments for now.
Chuckled Kirishima embarrassingly.
And Shinzo is following up on it internally from here, so I get to focus on the street.
Man, I haven't heard from the guy for a while.
Commented Kaminari with a grin.
How is he?
Never got a chance to talk with him. I was, inundated.
A wry grin pulled on Kirishima's face, recalling how the mission all ended trapped under rubble from the collapse of the warehouse behind the smuggler's den. He remembered the dim light from your phone and the way it shone on your face, close to his while he was in his unbreakable state. Back then, it was a tight situation, adrenaline pumping from the fight, but now, thinking back to the look on your face and how in awe you stared at him, it made his heart flutter. Why was he feeling this way?
Say, you were supposed to tell me about this special someone you're looking after.
Sero followed up with a smirk while he eyed Kaminari across the booth.
I deserve that much. Just because it's your birthday doesn't mean I'm going to let you in on everything.
Chimed Kaminari.
Wait a minute, you didn't tell me this!
Piped Shido.
If I knew, I would have organized an extra seat!
It's not like that, it's just work. I arranged to keep an eye on someone as part of their witness protection program.
Explained Kaminari while he enjoyed his beer.
So, you are a glorified babysitter?
Teased Sero with a smug grin.
Bodyguard!
Corrected Kaminari. The conversation soon became a drone in Kirishima's ears despite the colorful tones of his friends chiding and teasing away. Despite him enjoying the night, his thoughts returned back to you, wondering if you got yourself home safely. He knew you were a capable pro-hero with respect in your own right, but that didn't stop his thoughts from wondering if you were okay, with the amount of strain you placed onto your well-being after every session with him. He recognized the tells, despite your reassurance. The way you shook your limbs, rolled your shoulders, even how you hopped informed him of where you suffered from your quirk. He was amazed to hear that you hadn't looked into finding support to ease the tensions and strains of performing your quirk on patrol, learning how you self-managed instead. But that didn't halt his concerns, wondering if there was some way of convincing you to look into preventative measures not only for your professional life, but for your own personal freedom.
That extra's still there?
Asked Bakugo, eyeing Kirishima with an expectant look in his eye. Kirishima snapped out from his thoughts, realizing he was still out with friends, catching the middle of conversation about Kaminari's life before turning to Bakugo next to him. The blonde stared inquisitively at him through that scowl, nursing the bottle of beer in his hand and waiting for a response.
Yeah.
Answered Kirishima with reluctance.
They should have left by now.
Then quit worrying. You've been sulking the whole time we've been here.
Bakugo, be nice.
warned Ishida with a teasing pout.
One of these days, Kirishima might just invite them to hang out, and I can finally meet them face to face and judge them for myself.
Yeah, when are we going to meet this mysterious pupil?
Asked Sero, his attention now focused on Kirishima's waking life.
They're not. We're learning from each other. There's no teacher-student dynamic going on.
Explained Kirishima with his fingers tapping against the beer bottle he held in hand.
I think it'll benefit both of us on the field, especially because of Fat Gum partnering with other agencies lately.
Come on, you said you invited them to weekly sessions as part of a working relationship. Smart move.
Piped Kaminari, a little relieved that the attention was taken away from him.
It's not like that!
Now you're sounding like Kaminari.
Chirped Sero.
Hey, mine is work!
Exclaimed Kaminari defensively.
You should invite them over instead of leaving them at the agency.
Suggested Ishida with a grin.
We're all curious who has gotten our Red Riot distracted lately.
I'm not distracted!
Defended Kirishima.
Tuh.
A scoff interrupted the conversation, slightly condescending at Kirishima's response. It was no surprise to everyone who that was, turning to face the irate blonde who took a swig of his beer nonchalantly. Bakugo eyed his scowl towards Kirishima, laced with irritation from the to and fro in conversation that became repetitive over time. His attention still laid on Kirishima, eyeing that aloof, if not unaware expression that only irritated him more.
You invite them. You organize your day and time for them. And still, after all these months, you can't accept what Dunceface, Raccoon Eyes, and Tape Arms have been saying in the last 2 minutes.
Explained Bakugo, strangely with a calm tone in his gruff voice.
We know you, shitty hair. You wouldn't have given them the time of day unless you felt the need to. Otherwise, forget inviting them anywhere near us. They're just an extra after all.
Everyone fell silent after Bakugo's proclamation and observation over the matter, leaving Kirishima back in the swell of his thoughts, staring at his beer bottle. He wasn't surprised at all from Bakugo's insinuation over his dilemmas. Though meeting up with friends was difficult to come by, he had called him every once in a while and had been vocal about you in conversation. In hindsight, Kirishima wondered if Bakugo grew sick and tired of hearing about his feelings about you. But behind Bakugo's irritable nature, Kirishima saw the good behind his words. Kirishima continued to think back to you, probably already having left the agency and hopefully made your way home during this time of night. The words that were shared between his friends became a drone once more, lost in his thoughts while he eyed the bottle in his hands again.
Kirishima!
Called Sero in his jolly state, poking Kirishima's shoulder.
Hey, dude!
Shitty hair!
Yelled Bakugo, surprising Kirishima while he clumsily grabbed hold of his beer from tipping onto the booth.
Did you hear what we just said?
Asked Ishido, a little concerned about Kirishima's awareness. The table fell silent once more, awaiting for a cohesive response from the redhead after he straightened himself from the momentary scare. He stared blankly at his friends, unaware of what had transpired before a sigh from Kaminari broke the silence.
Let him be. He really is distracted.
Casually commented Kaminari with a shrug. A scoff, a sigh, and a facepalm later, the group continued the night whiling away with drink and fun. Still, Kirishima's mind returned back to you every now and then, taking Bakugo's words to heart. Perhaps he should take that leap. A deep breath helped ease the tension in your lungs and your back, finally feeling a little normal now after the cooldown. You grew concerned over how long it took this time around, finding that the time was way past closing hours for Fat Gum's agency. Luckily, you were given a visitor's pass to enter and exit the premises, more so that you were acquainting yourself with a few of the night guards who patrolled the agency floor. An hour and a half. That was twice as long as you normally cooled off from patrols and encounters in the city. You were exerting more than your usual share, training with Kirishima, with his range of skills and his tenacity to add on top. The prospect of utilizing support items was becoming more enticing of an idea after Kirishima had suggested to look into it, even going so far to suggest agencies that could help find ways of improving your routine.
You're still here?
Uttered a low voice from the doors, turning to find Tamaki Amajiki ready to leave the agency for the day.
Yeah, just finished my cooldowns.
You replied while you rolled and shook your shoulders.
Longer than usual?
Well, Kirishima suggested I look into getting some support items. Maybe I should.
Your voice trailed while you thought more on the topic, only to find Kirishima before you with his grin. Every session he seemed to light up when you arrived, happy and ready to get underway with the afternoon. You smiled to yourself seeing his smiling demeanor, something unlike how the media had painted his image. There was a sense of privilege learning about Kirishima behind the papers and the gossip. It was humbling in its own right.
You should do something about that,
uttered Amajiki, staring at your distracted expression, staring off towards the training room floor. Dumbfounded, you turned to Amajiki, your mind momentarily blank after being taken from your thoughts.
You don't know what I'm talking about, do you?
He continued, eyeing you curiously from behind the door frame.
Not really.
You sheepishly replied.
I believe that you've grown a liking to Kirishima.
Yeah, I think he's great.
I mean, you really like him.
Your heart dropped momentarily in your chest with a sudden heat flourishing in your cheeks.
What? No! I mean, I do, but that's besides the point.
You should tell him.
Interrupted Amajiki, surprised by his forwardness.
It's plain to see on your face.
No, I mean, Kirishima is a great guy.
You started, attempting to ignore that sudden rush of heat from your thoughts.
He's supportive, holds back no bars, very attentive.
Chances like these don't come by easily. Trust me. I've lost my chances years ago, and I can't get over it.
You gazed at Amajiki, finding something odd about the way he expressed these feelings. Normally, he was a recluse, a reputation he was well known for despite Fat Gum's overwhelming accolades for the pro hero. But there was another layer in his gaze that caught your attention. Was it regret?
Just think about it,
concluded Amajiki before he turned to leave, waving farewell as he did. Left alone in the large room, you contemplated over his words, taking stock of the emotions that ran rampant from the adrenaline that waned. Just what was that sudden heat that made your cheeks boil? It had been only a few months, a week at a time, but Kirishima's open and welcoming nature was a floodgate that opened to greet you. It was indescribable in words. They were all feelings. Avoiding this overload of emotion and information, you stared around the room, learning that the acoustics were amazing, in your opinion. In consideration how late it already was, you turned to your large gym bag and pulled out a small speaker, compact and lightweight, that connected to your phone. Perhaps some expended energy in the healthiest way would help alleviate the confusion you felt, At least you hoped it would before you selected a good bop to dance to. It was an opportunity you couldn't pass up, finally able to dance to your heart's content, free from roving eyes. The night was long but filled with joy after catching up with friends and wishing Sero a happy birthday. Kirishima, drunk from the alcohol but conscious enough to direct himself, opted to leave his motorcycle at the bar, courtesy of Eijirou, who organized safe parking options for those who had to travel. He wasn't the only one, with Kaminari having to leave his car behind as well. At least there was a chance to see him again upon collecting their rides. It was a decent walk through the city, eyeing the street lights that painted the walkways and keeping the chill at bay. He was lucky to bring his thick jacket, but with the way the night transpired, he felt luckier that he left his belongings back at Fat Gum's agency. Despite the sway in his step, he made his way back only to collect his things and head straight home to sleep the night off. Kirishima entered the agency, empty of life and bypassing the night guard, who was, as usual, asleep by the reception security desk. He shook his head behind his sleepy eyes at the man, walking with his footsteps echoing around him to find the locker rooms behind the foyer and through the corridors. The agency was quiet, something he wasn't used to being surrounded by his peers, until something thrummed and echoed against the walls. It reached his ears, the bass striking his temples that made his eye twitch through his tipsiness. Was that music? And was it playing from the training rooms? Curiosity took hold and brought Kirishima's feet back to where he was hours ago, holding a session with you and leaving you for his rendezvous with friends. Surely you couldn't still be here, he thought, wondering if you were a little worse for wear than you would have reassured. Thinking of you only made his mind wander back to his friends, keen to meet and learn more about you, but more so about his reluctance to do so. He questioned what held him back, slowly realizing his inclination towards his concerns. It was a professional relationship. All work. At least he wanted to believe that. Bakugo's words returned, realizing the meaning behind them and re-evaluating his keenness to learn more from you and about you. Kirishima sighed deeply, feeling his heart pound a little faster in his chest, almost in time to that music that echoed around. He found it surprising how the night guard hadn't woken from his sleep before he turned to find the doors still open from the room he left you behind. Peeking past the door frame, he still found you there, but no longer performing any exercises. Instead, you bopped in a different way, dancing across the room in reckless abandon. The way you moved differed from how you fought him earlier today, yet he recognized some smooth transitions that played a role in your form. In fact, he recalled his comparison between you and Eijirou, knowing the Pink Beauty utilized her dancing prowess in how she moved in battle. You would have something going for you should he introduce you to her soon. The beat ramped, as did yourself, feeling it course through you and soothing the joints like oil to a squeaky chain. You stepped in time, twirling and kicking in the air, if only as a refresher, but soon slipped into your own meditative trance. Music was your lifeblood outside of the pro-hero grind, swaying your hips and shoulders and kicking up the dirt with every consecutive beat. The bass was tantalizing and addictive, each beat a warm comfort inside your chest that brought a grin to your face. Soon smiling at the red eyes that stared back at you from the door. You stopped while the music played, staring into Kirishima's eyes, watching you for who knew how long he was standing there.
Oh, sorry.
He apologized loudly.
I didn't mean to interrupt.
Oh no, it's fine. I'm about to leave anyway.
You blurted, immediately grabbing for the speaker to switch it off as quickly as possible.
Is it this late already? I should have checked the time.
You couldn't help pulling that smile on your face, one that was forced from showing the sheer level of embarrassment you felt. How long was he standing there for?
I didn't know you danced.
He asked, curious, while he entered the room.
It's a hobby, not much really.
You briefly explained in haste while you tried to pack your bag.
I get carried away sometimes.
Hey, nothing wrong with a hobby. Do you perform often?
Not publicly. I just loved EDMs growing up because of their bass levels and, Wait, why are you here? Shouldn't you be at home?
Kirishima reeled back from the question, recalling his reason to return back to the agency, before being sidetracked by your music. He chuckled inwardly, his eyes looking away in embarrassment, wondering what to say to explain his presence. Meanwhile, you smelled something odd from Kirishima. Stale alcohol. He didn't appear drunk, but he was a little laxed compared to this afternoon. The chipper energy he had dulled, but it revealed a warmer side to him. Calm, despite the alcohol he had earlier. Amajiki's words returned in your mind, wondering if this was the chance to take, considering the situation.
Say, if you're not tired, I could teach you a few moves.
You suggested, spotting the surprise and the twinkle in his eye.
There's a club not too far from here that's still open. It's not rowdy, but it's enough to have a good time, and we could relax a little so it's not so late for the both of us.
Through the inebriation sobering up slowly, Kirishima smiled widely at the invitation. He didn't expect this turn of events. He hoped to find a moment next week considering the remarks his friends mentioned, but this was out of the blue. He didn't expect this.
Sure, as long as we come back here afterwards.
He bargained.
You could take one of the rooms. I don't want you walking back home this time of night.
Roger that.
You agreed with a smile, collecting your things before being led out of the room with Kirishima.
So, where is this place? It's not the red light district, is it?
Ew, no, that place is tacky.
Kirishima snickered under his breath with his toothy grin wide and bright at your response. He wasn't a connoisseur for nightclubs, but Esaha, being entertainment central for Musatafu, had taught him a few of the bigger names around.
Alright, Thumper. Lead the way.
He playfully ordered, allowing you to lead.
Thumper?
You questioned, more so out of curiosity.
Well, aren't you?
You pulled up out before you knocked your hip into his, playfully skipping ahead out from the agency and into the night. Kirishima only stared after you, finding it difficult to remove the smile from his face. You had beat him, fair and square.